To close the poll and see what folks have told us. Nice. Okay. I don't know if you guys can see that, but oh, this is great. We have a lot of people who use data analytics all the time, which is great. We're going to talk some more about that. A few that are just getting started. Some people would like to need a little bit of guidance. Got a few people that don't really use it for decision making, and some people that are not yet familiar with it. Hopefully we'll change some minds and shine some light on the utility and the power of data science to solve challenges. And I mean, this is certainly relevant in today's day and age, given all the new challenges that are on all of our plates. So sharing the screen here, I'm hoping everybody can see the screen. If not, go ahead and ping us. There should be, everybody's on mute, but we have a question and answer forum. So go ahead, any questions at all through the presentation, please feel free to use that feature. We'll try to get to all those questions, or if you want to comment or anything additional, go ahead and use that QA feature. We will all see it and be able to address any questions or comments. So again, thank you all for joining us this morning. We're very excited to be talking to you, especially about this topic. We're going to talk about using data science to tackle challenges in the time of COVID-19. And we're also going to talk about how we use this approach to target street closures in the city of Denver. First of all, a little bit about who we are as RevGen Partners. I know a lot of people on the call. I recognize a lot of names, and I'm sure folks are familiar with the company, but let me just talk briefly about what we do. We're a full-service consulting firm, and we serve clients from the Fortune 50 all the way down to the mid-market. We offer services primarily around three different areas: data and analytics, which we'll talk about today, customer experience, and then digital enablement. We help people to use technology to thrive in this ever-changing world in which we live in. And we are very much a purpose-driven company. I'm going to take a second and read the why that drives us. We at RevGen believe in empowering people, employees, clients, and those within our communities so that we all aspire to be more. Our values within the firm: respect, integrity, stewardship, and enjoyment. And I certainly hope you all enjoy these next 45 minutes. We're certainly excited to talk to everyone. And just something we're all at RevGen very proud of. We know that 90%, more than 90% of clients that we work with re-engage with RevGen. So over the next 45 minutes, we're going to learn a few things. We're going to talk about, first of all, how data science can help us make more informed decisions. And like I said, this is especially important. All of us, I know everyone on this call is facing unprecedented challenges, unprecedented decisions. And data science is a powerful tool, and it can help us with some of these new challenges. We'll also talk about how we used data analytics and data science for a real-world application that this team built as part of a 2020 hackathon for social good. And we'll talk a little bit about how using the right technology can actually accelerate the time to analytics. It can improve the quality of the work, and if it facilitates better team collaboration. So speaking of teams, this is us. I'm Brian. You'll hear from Megan today, Yulia, and Steve. And we're a group of data science consultants here at RevGen, and we're going to share with you our winning approach for helping local businesses through this time. I mentioned the 2020 Hackathon for Social Good, just a little bit about that. This was the Spark AI Summit is an annual conference that brings together a lot of the big names, the big thinkers in the AI and the data science space. This year, like everything else, it was done remotely, but they still held this hackathon as part of the summit. And we're very excited to be able to tell you we did win the grand prize, which meant that the organization donated $20,000 to the Gathering Place, a nonprofit of our choice here in Denver. And I would encourage everybody, if you're not familiar with the Gathering Place, take a minute after this presentation, look them up online. They do some fantastic work here in Denver, and we're just thrilled that we could support them through this process. So the problem on the table. What is it we were trying to solve? How did we approach this competition and this problem? So we understand that, certainly this pandemic, COVID-19, has affected all industries to some extent, but restaurants and hospitality have been extremely hard hit. This is kind of a staggering statistic, but according to the Colorado Restaurant Association, 56% of restaurants in this state are contemplating closure in the next 3 months without a change. And I mean, this is real. I know that everyone here, every day it seems like we're hearing about a new restaurant in Colorado or in Denver that's closing. And the issue, frankly, it's a conflict between the safety and well-being of customers and the need for restaurants to fill to capacity to bring in that revenue. The state recommends 50% capacity to accommodate safe social distancing to avoid the spread of the virus. However, again, according to the Colorado Restaurant Association, restaurants say they need 75% capacity to stay afloat. So there's an inherent conflict here. One of the best solutions that we've seen on the table for this is street closures that can help offset some of that lost revenue. Because what we're seeing is that it's not necessarily lost demand that's hurting the restaurants, it's that lost capacity. It's that inability to fill the restaurant, right? Under normal circumstances, full capacity, full revenue potential, restaurants built their business models around an expected capacity. If you're cutting that in half to accommodate social distancing, you're cutting your revenue potential in half. So one approach is to, close streets and allow that additional outdoor alfresco cafe style seating on the closed roads. And we're seeing where that gets a lot of restaurants a little closer to that 75% mark, that key capacity they're looking for. So we know that this can help restaurants, but how do you decide, right? Denver can't close every street. It wouldn't make any sense, and it would, cause certainly more problems than it would help. And so there's 7,000 restaurants across the city of Denver and 3,000 different streets. So this is a very complex and frankly very important decision. And these are the kinds of decisions that a lot of folks out here you see on a regular basis. These extremely complex, very difficult, very important decisions. So there's a way to approach it. And we'll talk, about how we use this for this particular problem to help address this issue with restaurants. But we'll also help, walk everyone through how you can apply this type of logic and this type of decision making to a much wider range of use cases. So really, it's such a big problem, it requires breaking this down into the underlying drivers. If you look at the whole problem as a whole, 7,000 restaurants, 3,000 streets, it's really difficult to decide where to close, what to close. But you can break it into smaller decisions, sort of smaller cost-benefit analysis decisions. And again, we'll walk you through how we did this specifically. And when you break it down to those component parts and then systematically and programmatically apply those individual decisions across thousands of different data points, you're able to answer questions much more clearly and much more effectively. So I'm going to pass it off to Megan, who's going to talk more about our specific approach to this problem and generally how we approach these types of things.
Yes, thank you, Brian. So being consultants, we have this framework that you see here that we can take across different industries, across different clients, and really the same framework can apply to something like a social or economic challenge as well. So like Brian was saying, whenever there's a pandemic, you can't really find an expert in that space. So sometimes really what you need to revert back to is data and how can we use information that we have to help make some of these decisions that we don't have experience on in the past. So the first step to this framework is to really understand the need behind it. So most successful data projects, they actually happen whenever you put either an analyst or a data scientist next to your biggest decision makers so they can watch them closely and see what types of challenges they have, what types of decisions that they're making. We see a lot as consultants, if someone, for example, will come to us and ask for a churn model, what we need to go back and say, okay, what is driving this? Are you wanting to optimize retention spend? Are you wanting to understand where you should go spend more time in customer care? Or do you want to just identify what customers are sticky so you can understand why and how to go find more of them? So it's really understanding what are you going after. And we have found that the projects fail most whenever someone is trying to chase accuracy over that actual result that you're going after. So focusing on the business need then gets you into the fun part of the coding. So understanding what data that you need, ingesting that, going out, finding where it lives. How do you make it into one big model to tell that full story? And then get into explore and prepare. This is asking your data different types of questions, running different types of analysis to answer questions you didn't previously know were questions, and then getting into the cleansing. This takes a good amount of time because the only time data is clean is when you're in grad school. So you learn real quick after that. And then what you see here, the cost benefit analysis. This is where your actual modeling will live. So depending on what type of data science problem you have, whether it's a regression, optimization, cost benefit, this is where that modeling comes in. It is towards the end of that green section. And then what we did was we created an interactive app, but this is really understanding what type of output do we need for this type of data science problem. So do you need just a one-time answer to give to someone? Do you need results that are updated in real time to go automate a decision? Do you need an interactive app? So understanding what that output should look like, and then feeding it into getting in the right hands, giving them whether it's additional insight, a decision that's automated, whatever that is, getting it into the right hands to go make those decisions. So if you could go to the next slide, we'll talk about specifically for our project. So understanding the need, that was really the first 10 minutes that Brian walked us through is what is that economic impact, the benefit minus the cost of closing different streets. So we wanted to understand, here's the challenge that we're facing today. How do we go solve this? So we need to give them that information of the impact. We need to, what we thought was best was creating this interactive app to say, if I select a street, it tells me the pros, it tells me the cons. So then someone, whether it's someone at the government level, city council, can go make that decision. So we spent a lot of time just decomposing this need. And then next, Yulia will walk us through the next phase of getting into the data.
Okay. Thank you, Megan. So we decided early on what kind of data we will need for our analysis. We were looking for a list of local businesses, restaurants, any other stores in the neighborhood, as well as traffic counts around. So originally, we wanted to use city records on licensed businesses, but our analysis showed that this data was not really sufficient. In particular, some restaurants had their business address listed instead of actual location, and we ended up with Denver restaurants scattered across the country, as you can see on the first map. So instead, we decided to use Google API, which provided much more realistic data. For instance, when we looked at one of the well-known local areas called Larryville Square, here at the bottom on the left, so we knew right away that there is no way there is only one restaurant there. And Google API provided a complete list instead. As far as traffic data goes, our initial analysis of city data showed these data had to be acceptable. Next. So this is where the real main work began. So really, there are multiple surveys that show that most data scientists spend way more time massaging and preparing data than building and refining their models. And we were not an exception. So as an example, at first we consumed data via Google API, and then we created script in R language to clean raw data and organize it in such a way so it is ready for ingestion into our model. Next. So the first couple of words about the technology we used. So it is called Databricks, and Databricks is a unified data analytics platform used by data engineers, data scientists, and business analysts to effectively work with large-scale data, really any scale of data, and collaborate in a single environment. And there are several benefits around Databricks. That's why we chose it as our analysis tool. So first of all, it's cloud-based, which makes a setup and administration and in general working very simple and very quick. It has a familiar interface for data scientists who are used to work with Jupyter notebooks. It is also very good for collaboration for teams with diverse skill set, like our team was, since it allows to mix popular languages like R, Python, and SQL. And last but not least, it is based on Spark, which is the most popular big data computing platform. It is very fast as well as scalable, and it allows to combine data in different formats: structured, non-structured, batch, streaming, really data of any size, so you can perform your analysis in one place. So by using Databricks platform, it was very easy to start preparing and exploring our data right away. For example, besides formatting Google area, we also performed several other steps to convert and clean our data sets. So we did some renaming, data conversions, pivoted data, and created additional features and data elements that we would further need in our analysis. And all this was done in a familiar Jupyter-like interface. Majority of our code was done using Python, but we also mixed in SQL because it was easier to use it sometimes. Okay, next. So finally, we were ready for the actual analysis and building cost-benefit model. The approach we took was around building a cost and benefit baseline, so we can make a tangible comparison and decide which areas are the best to close. We considered each item on the menu, so to say, because we're talking about restaurants here, and associated dollar amount that we believe will be spent or earned due to the street closure. So here you can see, in terms of costs, the city will incur some costs due to the need of police presence at barricades and controlling traffic, as well as lost parking. Increased traffic can be estimated in terms of lost time for people sitting in their cars and driving around to find a parking spot. As far as benefits go, restaurants will obviously benefit from increased capacity and more paying customers, while restaurant employees will win in terms of salary and tips. So when we put all this together, we were able to determine net benefit or loss for each of the city areas that we considered and determine which was the most beneficial to close for outdoor dining. And once we had our analysis ready, we wanted to present it in a more visual way. So we built interactive dashboard using Databricks charting capabilities. Here I will hand it over to Steve to talk about our findings.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, so for those that are familiar with the area, our recommended zone was Pearl Street in comparison to Tennyson and Larimer. To expand further on what Julia talked about, we saw that restaurants generally benefited more than other business types. So if you think about clothing stores, bookstores, other retail stores that may be in the area, restaurants are the biggest beneficiary. And then within the restaurant industry, the employees would benefit greater than the actual restaurant owners. Again, restaurants are able to employ, bring back more of their workforce. Those employees are subsequently able to make close to, or if not more money than they used to make from tips and wages. And we broke down our restaurants into different levels, different tiers. So we segmented our restaurants and found that the really sweet spot were those that are within $25 to that $60 plate range. So with all those benefits, there are obviously costs. The local government would incur the most cost. So if you think about what does it take to close the streets, the officers, the staff, security that you will need, and then their subsequent salaries as well. It's not just from a cost perspective, there's also lost revenue as well for the local government. So in the areas that we examine, They have parking meters. There would be lots of revenue from parking meters. Think about on average how many traffic parking, or actually how many traffic tickets might be issued on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. So there's a loss of revenue as well to the city. So that's the general sense of what we found is that in a local Denver downtown area, Tennyson was the sweet spot. If you look at this slide here, this is really showing what the analytic process, the analytic cycle, it's all about. This is, if done properly, this is truly the model that you should follow, where you start with the assumptions and hypothesis, just like we did. And then as you build your model and you conduct the analysis, you can review your actual results and then refine those to see if your assumptions are right. Where you're falling off, you can refine those estimates and then start over again. So this is the typical analytics process that you should follow if you're doing analytics properly. And then on the next slide, so our assumptions was that we thought employment would increase with increased seating capacity. And that's exactly what we found, right? And you can see that trajectory going, that there's a linear trajectory there, upward trajectory that shows employment is going to increase as seating capacity increase. But there are other things that you can examine. There are other hypotheses that you can test. For example, although we thought that Pearl Street and restaurants in general would benefit if you, for example, close Larimer or some other street, perhaps different business type may benefit as well. So if you think about, again, some retail stores, clothing store, bookstores, for example, perhaps on those streets, they may fare better than restaurants. So what you can really do in that case is score your zones or your streets, and then score the different businesses, and then you can merge those data and then see, okay, in certain zones, it's better for us to close restaurants. In other places, other businesses may be more effective. From a data standpoint, you can examine more recent or even streaming data if you have the capability. So that way you can account for some noise and some biases that you have in your data. And then what you can do with that is to say, okay, if we're looking at things on a daily basis or even a weekly basis, perhaps we notice that traffic is not really congested or conducive in this neighborhood. So we need to reduce the capacity, the sitting capacity, or there's limited traffic around the surrounding areas. So perhaps we can extend the closures further out because there's reduced traffic. And then beyond that, this is not just something that you can use in a big or large cities. This can also be applied to rural and smaller area. The challenge there is you have to make sure that you have data that's obviously available and also reliable to extend this beyond a major city or a major section of your organization, if you will. So now we're going to get into a little bit of the use cases, and we're going to talk about some of the role that analytics can play to solve some of your teams and challenges that you have within different business units within your organization. The first one that comes to mind here is targeting. Targeting is a common issue that we see with sales and marketing teams where there's no alignment with the customers. So a couple challenges are, we're not going after the right customers, which ultimately reduces the sales and the profit. Analytics could help us identify the right customer type, the right customer segments that we need to go after. And then also thinking about from a competition standpoint, which customers are being neglected by our competition that we can target and really extend our sales and marketing efforts too. So with that information, organization can be more efficient with their sales lead and their marketing campaigns. Analytics will help us really identify the right customer type, those that fit our company culture and really our business model. And so then you can start developing some hypothesis around what click-through may be, or if you have those hypotheses already, you can confirm those as you develop your model. You can also examine certain customer behaviors that you may want to input into your model or tweak your model based on those behavior accuracies or inaccuracies. The next is business valuation. Business valuation are really a unique challenge because if you think about every leader, some of you on the call today, you have everyone has a convincing reason why their business should be valued perhaps maybe higher than it should be. Analytics could really help us examine some of those driving factors. We can reduce some of those wild speculations and assumptions, and we can look at really what's projected from a revenue standpoint, understanding our cost and margins, and then really how does competition factor into our valuation. And then with analytics, we can test our hypothesis and say, okay, were some of the assumptions that we made, were those correct? Were those far off? Again, based on that, subsequent valuations, or even if you want to value certain segments of your business, you can use that same model, just tweaking it a little bit as needed. And lastly, this is one that I really enjoy. I know this is a relatively new area. Is around retention and recruiting. This is a prime case for analytics. So if you think about this new people analytics that they're starting to brew, this is more around HR. So you think about HR and recruiters and how they struggle to find the right fit, how they struggle to find the right candidate, how organizations struggle to retain some of their top talents, where the challenge is really for HR and recruiters to find who fit the company culture, who should we extend an offer to, and really what does that offer look like? What should that conversation look like? And then what are the possibilities that this person would accept an offer if we present it to them? So again, analytics here can help us identify the characteristics of high-performing individuals or high-performing teams within our organization. And then we can apply some of those same characteristics as we start to screen candidates and applicants. So then we can, if we understand using analytics, how collaboration works within our organization with those high performance, what is at the same level, what is the right benefits, compensation package, et cetera, what are the right roles. We can, again, as we screen those candidates, we can look at their experience, or we can engage them to see, okay, this person would fit what we're looking for. Again, in this case, what's really critical here, especially when it comes to when you start getting into more the people side of human making decision, is to use analytics as sort of a complement and not a replacement to the human decision. Because I think it's critical to keep in mind that analytics is really meant to supplement those decisions. HR professionals, for example, they have lots of experience within this area, but analytics could really help them say, okay, instead of targeting 100 or more candidates, you can target, maybe 20, 25 of your best candidates. You can start screening those, and then those are the ones that you really need to focus on. So you can save some time and effort there, as well as you can start to identify, okay, these are top talents within our organization. These are folks that we may be in danger of losing because we're not reaching them really at the point of their needs. So those are some use cases that you can apply. Analytics goes way beyond these three areas. You can apply it to operation, finances, different areas within your organization. So thank you for your time today. We will now open things up for some questions. Remember, we are taking it to the streets, and so be safe out there as you dine in the streets of Denver, Colorado, or wherever you may be.
Thanks, Steve. Blake, do we have any questions that have come across through the Q&A feature?
We do. The first one I want to throw back at you guys is, could you elaborate on what you mean by decision support?
Yeah, I can take that one. And Steve, you just made a comment that I think it explains it well, but it's how analytics, a lot of times whenever you hear something like artificial intelligence or machine learning, you can use data science to make those more automated decisions, like if you wanted to set up a machine to optimize marketing spend based on your inputs. But whenever we talk about decision support, this is when we're trying to provide all of the right information or analytics in order to make a larger decision. So something could be like, where should we put the next plant for our supply chain management? Should we release this new product? Any type of question that's most likely a big one, that you could either provide historical data to give them that full picture. You could provide predictive analytics. You could also run some type of scenario modeling to say, if you were to do X, here would be your outcome. If you were to run Y, here's the outcome B. So really decision support is whenever you use data that you have in order to provide more context or information in order to go support normal human decision making.
Excellent. Thanks, Megan. I got another one for you guys. It is regarding analytics and the human experience. Wanting to know, is analytics taking over the human touch, and how do they intersect?
All right, I'll take this one. So analytics and the human touch. Analytics, and the way I think about analytics with and how it intersects with the human decision making and the human touch is, like I said earlier, they are meant to be complementary of each other. So in every decision that we make in those use cases, we see that there is a human element to any of this business operation, business decision that we need to make. Analytics, again, is supposed to be that complementary tool. So you think about whether you want to, you have a growth strategy, or you want to expand your market share, for example, or whether it's internally, you want to improve your employee experience, or you want to be better with your budget and forecasting. Analytics has a role to play in each of those decisions. However, there's still the human experience that you cannot account for, right? So there's no way that you can really put that in the model and say, okay, you know, I've experienced this or we've seen this. So a model cannot necessarily capture that. Again, it goes back to my point earlier. You identify those drivers, those factors, and then you know, as you plug in your model may tell you one thing, but then based on your experience, you know that, okay, we need to take a different approach, but this is what the facts are. We need to consider how do we how does those facts, the results, how does those inject into the decision that we're going to make. So I don't know, Brian, did you want to add anything else to that one?
No, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, Steve. It you know, really is, and like Megan was saying too, I mean, it's you know, nothing in data analytics necessarily replaces that human touch, replaces the human decision. I mean, done correctly, they really work, you know, well together. It can really, you know, and I mean, when we were looking at this, for example, too, looking at all these different locations, looking at all these you know, possible street closures even. I mean, it really was, you know, we kind of checked all those assumptions, or we checked all that data, you know, with our own understanding of this area, with our own understanding of, you know, these individual streets and these individual restaurants. So I think this was a really good example of that too, how, you know, the tool helped augmented the human touch, our experience, you know, in these locations, our experience in this city, and they really did work well together. And I think that's really where data analytics works the best, is when it's combined with people that understand the problem.
All right, I have one last question for you guys. So this question, I think, goes back to the original poll. If you guys remember do you use advanced analytics as part of your decision making? We had kind of results across the board about some just getting started, need guidance. And this is along that vein. Do you have any best practices, tips, or just general advice to establish a good analytics team?
Yeah, I'll start with that, but I'm sure each of us have a response to that question, because we've seen it done well, we've seen it done not well. So what I would say first is, if you do hire someone with an analytics background, putting them next to those decision makers. They really need to understand the business and what your challenges are, versus just being really smart in the data space. So whether it's you know, I've seen it done well whenever you have a marketing analytics team, a product analytics team, just teams that are very connected with that business, and they know they're in those status meetings every day, and they can see what's going on, so they can directly bring that like data science background to help those questions.
Yeah, and I just want to elaborate real quick, Brian, that I think the word team, if you want to think about best advice or tips, is that team is really critical, right? So I think I've seen where it's not done properly, Megan, where organizations would, you know, hire an analyst and then put it on the market and within the marketing ops and say, okay, this is our analytics guy, and we're all going to go to this guy and throw everything at him. I think you really need to start with understanding your organizational need, and then say we need a dedicated team for analytics to support our analytics. So then, as you have different challenges, if you establish analytics within siloed teams, those teams can work together. And then the other piece is you have to empower those analytics teams to not just present the results to you, but how do you actually drive on those results that you found. So, you know, if they present a solution to you, it's critical that you empower those teams to be able to execute on some of those decisions.
Nice. Steve, just building on that, I think that's exactly right. You know, we've seen a lot of successful organizations, or organizations that are successful with data analytics, really strive for and have and continue to foster that data-driven culture. It's, you know, across the organization, you know, where leaders and leadership decisions, you know, they're always asking the question, all right, what does the data show us? You know, what does the data tell us? What do we have that can help us, you know, make these difficult decisions or understand our business? But it's really part of a culture, I would say, and where it's been successful, the organizations that have embraced this and really made it a fabric of the organization have, you know, seen a lot of success with this. Cool. So I think, you know, I wanted to thank everybody here. I think that's all we have as far as questions. I did want to thank everyone for taking the time out this morning. I know everybody's busy, and certainly appreciate it. Very much enjoyed the time together this morning. And I would just mention that, you know, this session has been recorded, so we'll go ahead and share it with folks on the webinar. We have another webinar coming up soon, so do please stay tuned. We're going to talk about data privacy in the next webinar. But again, real pleasure. Thank you all so much for your time, for participating today. And y'all have a great day. Be safe out there.